Ukraine is marking 1,000 days of war this Tuesday, with weary troops battling on multiple fronts, cities under relentless air attacks and uncertainty over future American support. Military losses have been heavy, although official numbers haven't been made public. Western estimates based on intelligence reports vary widely, but most say hundreds of thousands have been killed or wounded on each side. In a boost for Kyiv on Sunday, US President Joe Biden gave the green light for American long-range missiles to be used against targets deeper inside Russia, but the dramatic shift in policy may be reversed when Trump returns to the White House in January, and military experts caution that it may not be decisive in the course of the war. Well, for more, we can cross live to France 24's Gulliver Cragg. Gulliver, tell us more then about the mood in Ukraine, and are there hopes that this war can come to an end soon after 1,000 days?
You mentioned, I think, that Ukraine doesn't publish figures for military casualties. Volodymyr Zelensky at the start of this year put the figure at 31,000 dead. That was immediately assumed to be an estimate even then. In August 2023, the New York Times, citing American intelligence sources, had said it was at least 70,000 dead. It's obviously many more have died since then because Ukraine has been on the back foot. Here on Maidan Square in the center of Kyiv, there's the memorial to the dead. You can see thousands and thousands of flags, big and small, pictures of the victims. I think that in a way, this is the story that doesn't get told quite enough about this war, because when figures are always given for the civilian casualties, when Ukrainian cities, apartment buildings are bombed, then, you know, we hear about that and we hear 10 dead in Odessa or something like that. On any given day when we might hear that 10 civilians were killed in Odessa, there are probably dozens of Ukrainian soldiers who are killed on the front line. And remember, most of these people were not soldiers before the full-scale invasion started in February 2022. They perhaps never even thought of joining the army and having to defend their country. Some of them voluntarily mobilized themselves. Some of them were mobilized by forced mobilization that has become more and more unpopular. Yesterday, I was in the Donbass in eastern Ukraine talking to one soldier there about the possibility of negotiations, of somehow freezing the conflict, of a ceasefire. And he said, you know, it just doesn't bear thinking about the idea that all of these people died in vain. And I put it to him that maybe a ceasefire and a freezing of the conflict, even if Ukraine didn't get back all of its territory right away, but was able to continue as an independent country on a pro-Western path, wouldn't be such a bad result. And he said that's not the way it's going to play out. Russia would just regroup and in a few months or a few years would attack again and be stronger. We've got to beat them now while they're still weak. That's what he said. The problem is that Russia is no longer as weak as it was at the beginning of 2023 compared to Ukraine. Another soldier that I spoke to in Donbass told me one very, very harsh truth, which is that the Ukrainian side can't force people who don't want to fight to go and risk their lives as infantrymen, to go and, you know, storm the Ukrainian forces, knowing that the casualty rate will be extremely high. The Russians will kill people who refuse those orders. And that's a step that Ukraine's absolutely not prepared to take, he said. But the very big difference is, if you're that afraid of death, you'll be prepared to go to prison for refusing orders. But in Russia, it's death or death. And that is a ruthlessness on the Russian side that the Ukrainians are up against, that, you know, this soldier was saying it very candidly, that it makes it hard to see at this stage, you know, how they can, continue and how they can turn the tide.
Well, what about the situation on the battlefield then? And is there any expectations that Kyiv will start using American long-range missiles inside Russia?
Oh, I'm sure they'll start using them as soon as they possibly can, but whether or not it will make a very big difference, that's not clear. We understand it that they're only been authorized for use in Kursk region in Russia in order to have a bigger impact on the fighting, which is where the Ukrainians are losing ground in the Donbass. They'd need to be able to fire to those regions of Russia that are just to the east of the Donbass and take out the airfields there. There is an expectation that it will save some Ukrainian lives, that it will stop the Russians from being able to use their planes to fire these guided aerial bombs that have been doing a lot of damage both on the front line and beyond the front line. But there's not really an expectation that it will be able to turn the tide. One thing I wanted to remind viewers on this 1,000th thousandth day of the full-scale war is that, you know, this is not how the situation was at the beginning of 2023. At the beginning of 2023, having had successful counteroffensives and taken back territory in 2022, much of the Ukrainian population was really fully expecting that these counterattacks would continue and that they would take back their territory. It was the Russians who were on the back foot, and the Ukrainians, as they see it, were promised weapons and assistance and financing from their Western partners that did not arrive on time or did not arrive in a sufficient quantity. And there is a very real danger here of this whole country being so badly let down by the partners who promised more than they eventually gave. Although there is much reason to blame decisions made by the Ukrainian military and political leadership as well, the way I see it going is bitterness towards the West. It was not a given that the counteroffensive in 2023 would fail. It could have succeeded, and it didn't. And that's what, has left this country feeling so devastated, I think.
All right, Gulliver Cragg, thank you very much for your reporting there live from Kyiv in Maidan Square.